Major Garrett joins us now with more from Washington. And Major, I want to get to those Obamacare hikes in just a moment, as well as the event Donald Trump is attending there in D.C. later today. But I want to ask you about this new Bloomberg Politics poll out of Florida. Again, it shows the GOP candidate leading Hillary Clinton by 2 points. In speaking to the campaign, and we have heard talk of phony polls in days recent, is this where they see their nominee at current in Florida?
They see the race, and they have seen the race in Florida as competitive throughout. And the one thing the Trump campaign likes to remind us traveling Trump reporters, he outperformed meeting Donald Trump in the Republican primary. Those Republican primary polls indicated that Trump would win, but he won by a larger margin than the polls before that primary suggested. So the Trump campaign insiders always say, look, there is always the possibility that Trump will outperform the data you see in public. They believe that's what's going to happen in Florida. The pollster who did this poll, Ann Selzer, is very good. She has a long-standing reputation of being an exceptionally accurate pollster in the Iowa caucuses. She's now expanding her polling work to other states. She's not necessarily as grounded in Florida polling, but her methods are very well respected. And this is, I believe, a good poll. It is the only one, however, of the last 11 that show Trump with any kind of lead, and it is a lead within the margin of error, which means it is statistically insignificant. But the Trump campaign needs good news in battleground states, and it needs a lot of it. This is the first shred of good news in a battleground state in which the Trump campaign has no path to 270 electoral votes without the state of Florida. So in that sense, it's welcome news for the Trump campaign, but they need more of it.
And as we saw in your piece, perhaps the campaign got some more of it with regard to the news about these premium hikes as it regards the Affordable Care Act. You watched him at a string of events there across the state of Florida yesterday. How effective was he at staying on that specific message?
Well, he was effective. And look, it is a rallying message for Republicans. It has been since 2010, when Republicans first launched themselves back into a congressional majority, at least in the House, by their stinging attacks, even then, on the Affordable Care Act. This has been a mantra for Republicans for years, and it's been one for Donald Trump from the very beginning of his campaign. The Affordable Care Act is under stress in its implementation. Premiums are going up, deductibles are going up, there are fewer private insurance companies participating in the federal exchanges. It is under stress. And Democrats say that now in ways that they didn't even 1 or 2 years ago. This makes for an issue that puts Hillary Clinton on the defensive. It does something essential to Donald Trump right now, which is rallying Republicans, even marginally attached Republicans, and there are a good number of them when it comes to his campaign. So focusing on the Affordable Care Act and what's wrong with it helps Trump considerably. Now, if he keeps on this, that's one thing that would be an asset for Trump. But at some point in the next 13 days, someone may reasonably ask, what would you do instead? There is no substantive answer from the Trump campaign on what comes after the Affordable Care Act, should it ever be repealed. And the longer he stays on this messaging and this issue, the more likely that question is to arise. And I don't expect the Trump campaign will have any specifics to fill in that answer between now and Election Day, which could be a problem.
If it were to arise today, it would in fact be arising at a ribbon cutting. That's where Donald Trump will be for his hotel there in Washington, D.C. A second marketing event for the nominee in this week. What does it say about the candidate and perhaps the state of his campaign that fewer than 2 weeks out from the election, he is not in a place where he could perhaps make a real tangible impact on what we see November 8th?
Well, the most important thing I think it says is that Trump is worried about the brand Trump. It is under stress, not as much stress perhaps as the Affordable Care Act, but there are stories about conventions and those who used to book in Trump hotels no longer doing that because of the negative publicity generated by Trump himself and this presidential campaign. His brand name doesn't seem to be as potent commercially as it was when this campaign started. So at Doral, the golf club near Miami yesterday, he has this event. He could have had it anywhere. Why did he have it there? To buttress his marketing identity with the Trump name and the Doral Golf Club. The hotel here in Washington is already open. He had an event there. We remember it some weeks back. The event where Donald Trump for the first time said, President Obama is a citizen of the United States. This hotel doesn't need a grand opening, doesn't need a ribbon cutting, except for one reason. It needs more marketing. The room rates there have been cut nearly in half because people aren't booking that hotel. So Trump is running for president, but he's also trying to take care of his business. And he's doing so in such a conspicuous way and so late in the campaign, some Republicans reasonably wonder, what do you care more about, the Trump brand or winning this election?
And we can only hope the stage does not collapse today as it did that day. Major Garrett, as always, we do appreciate the insight.